Sylvia had always been a small and peaceful town, but something began to change. In late spring, when everything usually comes to life, it felt as though fear had settled over the town. First, the cats disappeared, silently, without a trace, and their absence was only noticed weeks later. Then the dogs vanished, and their owners found only leashes left on the ground, symbols of the fact that they would never return. Something was wrong, but no one could understand what. Nicholas, a 30-year-old programmer, was a man who always relied on logic and reason. But that night, as he walked home late from work, he felt that his familiar world had changed. Passing by an old abandoned park, he noticed something under a street lamp that defied explanation. It was a liquid, dark, as if poured out from the shadows. Its surface gently rippled, like water stirred by the wind. But there was no wind, and no clear source of this darkness. Nicholas froze, his heart pounding. The liquid suddenly stilled, as if it had noticed him too. The movement was intentional. He heard a faint whisper in his head but couldn't make out the words. With great effort, as though pulling himself away from a magnetic force, he turned and quickly walked away without looking back. But the sticky, suffocating fear clung to him all the way home. The next morning, the town was shaken by the first terrible incident. A local accountant, known for his kindness and calm demeanor, suddenly attacked his wife and children in a fit of rage. He nearly killed them before being stopped. People whispered, unsure of what to say. No one understood why such a decent man had committed such a violent act. But Nicholas knew. He couldn't explain it logically, but he felt a connection between the eerie liquid and the horrifying event. Days passed, and the town seemed to sink deeper into a sinister gloom. People became angry, irritable. Several other residents also lost control and committed acts of violence. Rumors spread throughout the town. Some spoke of a curse, others blamed mental illness. But Nicholas couldn't shake the feeling that it was all connected to the dark substance. One evening, after a long day, Nicholas found a letter left on his doorstep. The paper was old and scratched, and the handwriting was uneven, as if the writer had been in a hurry or in terror. Inside, there were just a few words. "It's here. It's already among us. Don't look at it, or you'll see what you shouldn't." Nicholas felt chills run down his spine. He knew this wasn't just a warning. Too many things had aligned. No longer willing to remain in the dark, he decided to go to the outskirts of town, to the abandoned factory that stood on the edge of the forest, consumed by time. The locals had long avoided it, but Nicholas suspected that was where it all began. The factory looked as if it had been abandoned for years. Rusty gates creaked in the wind, and inside was chaos. Broken windows, collapsed machines, and echoes of the past. But the scariest thing wasn't that. In the center of the hall, among the remnants of old equipment, a pulsating mass of living darkness slowly writhed. It was liquid, but did not flow along the ground. It moved and twisted like a living creature without form or face. It seemed to watch every corner, every sound. Nicholas stood frozen in shock as the darkness turned its attention to him. The whisper filled his mind again, at first quiet but gradually growing louder, like a voice trying to break through a wall of consciousness. "It sees you," the voice whispered, though it wasn't his own voice. The liquid slowly crawled across the floor as if hungry, reaching toward him, yearning to touch. And then Nicholas saw. Before his eyes, images began to flood, thoughts not his own. He saw how this darkness took over people, seeped into their minds and souls. It transformed them, turning them into monsters, driving them to commit horrible, unimaginable acts. It revealed their deepest fears and pains, filling them with a darkness that couldn't be contained. Nicholas tried to fight the invasion, but every thought felt like a heavy stone sinking deeper. The liquid filled his mind with horror and madness. He felt as though the darkness had already taken control of his body, guiding his every move, every thought like a string being pulled. He thought he was no longer human. But in the final moment, When it seemed there was no escape, when he thought he would become part of this faceless mass, a memory of his mother surfaced in his mind. She had always told him, "Darkness can't defeat light unless you let it in." The memory gave him strength, and Nicholas, with a great effort, broke free from the influence. He stumbled out, gasping, his mind still trembling from what had happened, but he was alive. But victory was fleeting. The liquid, this darkness, had left its mark inside him. He knew it was only a temporary escape because the town was already infected and there was no salvation. It wouldn't stop until everyone was consumed. Nicholas fled the town, running, but every corner, every house was filled with the shadow of the liquid. It slowly crept down the streets, filling every home, every crack, like an omnipresent enemy. When he reached the edge of the town, he heard the whisper again. This time he couldn't ignore it. He knew the darkness had already penetrated his mind. He looked back at his town, now just a shadow of what it once was, and he realized he would never be able to escape it.